Sharks are often misunderstood predators, and their interactions with humans can be complex. While some attacks are deemed unprovoked, many occur when sharks perceive humans as a threat or competition for food, making the distinction blurry. But what happens when these ocean giants and other sea creatures turn their focus on unsuspecting swimmers, divers, and boaters? Prepare for 6 harrowing encounters where the line between predator and prey becomes dangerously thin. On a bright afternoon in March 2000, 22-year-old Josh Bennett was enjoying an ideal day of surfing with friends at Driftwood Bay, a well-known surf spot on the southern coast of South Africa. The bay was nestled along the Wild Coast, famous for its rugged beauty and powerful waves. The area drew surfers from all over, eager to ride the consistent swells of the Indian Ocean. The sun was high in the sky, casting a golden hue over the water, and the conditions couldn't have been better. The waves were perfect, rising and curling with just the right amount of force, and the wind was light, providing the kind of day every surfer dreams of. Josh was in his element, riding wave after wave, his connection with the ocean honed over years of practice. He had been surfing since he was a young boy, learning the sport on these shores. Now, as a young man, he was a skilled and confident surfer, fully aware of the risks of the sport but never letting fear get in the way of his passion. That day he felt particularly at ease, surrounded by his friends, laughing and cheering each other on as they took turns catching waves. The bay was alive with activity. A handful of other surfers dotted the water, and along the beach, families and tourists enjoyed the warmth of the sun, some watching the surfers while others relaxed under umbrellas. The rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore mixed with the distant calls of seabirds. It was a day like any other at Driftwood Bay, where the ocean's beauty and power were in perfect harmony. The group paddled further as the afternoon wore on to catch the more giant waves forming beyond the break. Josh, always up for a challenge, led the way. The paddle out was leisurely and the water was calm between sets, so they made it to the lineup without much effort. The sun was starting its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows on the water, but the waves were still coming in strong. As Josh floated on his board, waiting for the next set, he felt a deep sense of peace. The ocean had a way of making everything else fade into the background. It was just him, the water, and the anticipation of the next wave. He glanced at his friends, chatting and laughing, their boards bobbing in the gentle swells. Everything seemed perfect, almost too perfect. But then something changed. The air felt different, heavier somehow, and the usual sounds of the ocean seemed to hush. Josh noticed it first, a strange silence that settled over the water. The seagulls circling above were now gone, and the other surfers had gone quiet, their eyes scanning the horizon as if sensing something was amiss. Josh's instincts kicked in. He knew the ocean well, and this sudden stillness was a sign that something was wrong. But before he could fully process what was happening, the water beneath him erupted violently. In an instant, a massive great white shark exploded from the depths, its powerful body launching upward with terrifying speed and precision. The shark's jaws clamped down on Josh's surfboard, the force of the attack nearly splitting the board in half. The impact sent Josh flying into the air before he crashed into the water, disoriented and panicked. For a brief moment, everything was chaos. Josh struggled to regain his bearings, the cold shock of the water hitting him as he tried to understand what had just happened. His surfboard, now mangled and useless, floated nearby, a stark reminder of the danger lurking beneath. But before he could swim safely, the shark circled back, its dark shape cutting through the water like a torpedo. Josh barely had time to react as the shark approached him again, aiming for his leg. The predator's jaws clamped down with a force that felt like being hit by a truck, the razor-sharp teeth slicing through flesh and bone. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, a searing agony that shot through his entire body. He tried to kick free, to fight back, but the shark's grip was unyielding. The ocean around him turned red with blood, the water swirling as the shark began to thrash, trying to pull him under. Josh's mind was a blur of pain and terror as he realized he was in a life-or-death struggle. His friends, now fully aware of what was happening, watched in horror from a distance, their shouts of fear and desperation lost in the ocean's roar. Despite the excruciating pain and the overwhelming fear, a surge of adrenaline pushed Josh to fight with everything he had. He punched and kicked at the shark, desperate to escape its grip. The shark, momentarily startled by the resistance, released its hold but wasn't finished. It circled again, ready to strike once more. Josh's strength was fading fast, the blood loss and pain taking their toll. He knew he had to get out of the water to reach the safety of the shore or the boat that was now racing toward him. But the shark was relentless, drawn by the scent of blood, its predatory instincts in full force. With one final burst of energy, Josh managed to grab hold of his broken surfboard, using it as a shield as the shark came in for another attack. The impact knocked the board out of his hands, but it gave him enough time to start swimming toward his friends, who were desperately trying to reach him. The water churned as the shark made its final pass, its jaws snapping shut just inches away from Josh's leg. But this time, it didn't strike. The boat was closing in, and the commotion confused the predator, causing it to veer off course. Josh's friends pulled him onto the ship, his body shaking from shock and pain. The water around them still stained with blood. As they sped toward the shore, the great white shark vanished into the depths, leaving only the remnants of the brutal attack. Once so peaceful and inviting, the ocean had shown its genuine, terrifying power, and Josh's life would never be the same. On a bright morning in July 2002, Rachel Collins, a 29-year-old vacationer from Toronto, was exploring the warm, crystal-clear waters off the coast of Eleuthera, one of the many beautiful islands in the Bahamas. The day had begun ideally, with the sun casting its golden light over the turquoise sea. Rachel was on a snorkeling excursion with a small group of fellow travelers, each eager to witness the vibrant marine life the Bahamas were famous for. This was Rachel's first trip to the islands, and she was captivated by the natural beauty around her. The pristine beaches, the swaying palms, and the endless stretch of blue water that seemed to melt into the sky. After a leisurely breakfast at the small beachfront resort, the group boarded a boat that would take them to one of the best snorkeling spots in the area. The guide, a local Bahamian with years of experience, assured them that the reef they were heading to was home to a dazzling array of fish, coral formations, and other marine creatures. The boat ride was smooth, the sea calm, and the group chatted excitedly as they sped across the water. For Rachel, this was the highlight of her trip. She had always loved the ocean, but living in a landlocked city had limited her exploration opportunities. Now here she was, about to dive into one of the most beautiful underwater environments in the world. When they reached the reef, the guide gave them a brief overview of the area, emphasizing the importance of respecting the wildlife and avoiding sudden movements that could startle the fish. Rachel listened carefully, her heart racing with anticipation. She donned her snorkel and fins, checked her mask one last time, and then with a deep breath, slipped into the warm, inviting water. The world below the surface was everything she had hoped for and more. The reef was alive with color and movement. Schools of fish darted in and out of the coral, their scales shimmering in the sunlight that filtered through the clear water. Rachel floated near the surface, her arms and legs moving gently as she took the breathtaking scene around her. She felt a deep sense of peace, a connection with the natural world that was both exhilarating and calming. The sounds of the ocean surrounded her, a soft symphony of bubbles and distant calls that seemed to come from another world. Rachel swam further from the boat, eager to explore more of the reef. The water was so clear that she could see to the sandy bottom, where larger fish glided gracefully over the rocks. She was mesmerized by the beauty of it all, wholly absorbed in the moment. The guide had mentioned the possibility of seeing a barracuda, a sleek and fast predator known to patrol these waters, but Rachel wasn't worried. She knew these fish were usually wary of humans and posed little threat unless provoked. But as she continued to explore, Rachel noticed a sudden shift in the water around her. The fish swimming peacefully nearby scattered in all directions, as if fleeing from something unseen. Once so calm, the water grew colder, and a strange tension filled the air. Rachel felt a twinge of unease, a sense that something was not quite right. She looked around, scanning the water for any sign of danger. And then she saw a flash of silver, a sleek, torpedo-like shape moving toward her with incredible speed. It was a giant barracuda, its long, slender body glinting in the sunlight as it closed in on her. The fish was much larger than she had imagined, its eyes fixed on her with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. In an instant, the barracuda was upon her. It moved with lightning speed, its sharp teeth bared as it lunged at her arm. Rachel barely had time to react as the fish struck, its jaws closing around her forearm with a force that felt like a vice. The pain was immediate and excruciating, a searing sensation that shot through her entire body. She tried to pull away, but the barracuda's grip was unyielding, its teeth slicing through flesh and muscle with terrifying ease. The water around her turned crimson as blood poured from the wound, mingling with the seawater to form a dark cloud that spread through the reef. Rachel's mind was a blur of panic and pain as she struggled to free herself from the predator's jaws. She kicked furiously, her flippers churning the water as she tried to escape. But the barracuda was relentless, its powerful body thrashing as it tore at her arm. The fish released her briefly, only to reconsider and strike again, this time going for her leg. The speed and ferocity of the attack were overwhelming, leaving Rachel in a state of shock. She could feel the fish's teeth tearing into her calf, the pain so intense that it took her breath away. Her vision blurred as she fought to stay conscious, her heart pounding in her chest as she realized that she was in a life-or-death struggle. Desperation took over as Rachel continued to kick and thrash, her movements frantic and uncoordinated. The barracuda was undeterred, its predatory instincts driving it to continue the assault. Each time it struck, the pain grew worse, her body weakening with every second. The water around her was thick with blood, and she knew the scent would attract other predators if she didn't find a way to escape. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, Rachel caught sight of the boat. The guide and the other snorkelers had seen the attack and were racing toward her, their faces etched with fear and determination. The ship sped closer, the engine roaring as it cut through the water. Rachel reached out, her hand trembling as she tried to signal for help, but the barracuda wasn't finished. It lunged at her one last time, its teeth snapping shut just inches from her face. The boat arrived just in time. The guide reached down, grabbed Rachel's arm, and hauled her out of the water with all his strength. She collapsed onto the deck, her body shaking uncontrollably as the pain and shock overwhelmed her. The barracuda, finally deterred by the commotion, swam off into the depths, leaving only the trail of blood and the remnants of its brutal attack. Rachel lay on the deck, gasping for air, her vision fading in and out as the world around her spun. The guide shouted for help, his voice urgent as he tried to stop the bleeding. The once beautiful waters of the Bahamas had become a nightmare, where the line between paradise and peril had been crossed instantly. In August 2004, a small group of explorers embarked on a journey deep into the Amazon rainforest, where the line between adventure and danger often blurred. Among them was Paulo Mendes, a seasoned guide with years of experience navigating the dense jungle and its treacherous waterways. The group, consisting of 3 biologists and 2 documentary filmmakers, had come to study the region's wildlife and document the extraordinary biodiversity of this remote part of Brazil. The expedition was not without risks, but Paulo assured the group they would safely traverse the challenges ahead with his guidance. The day began like many others in the Amazon, hot, humid, and teeming with life. The group had been trekking for hours through the thick underbrush, their clothes damp with sweat and humidity, their faces smeared with insect repellent. Despite the discomfort, they were in awe of the rainforest's beauty. Towering trees stretched high into the canopy, their leaves filtering the sunlight into a soft green glow. The air was filled with birds, insects, and the distant calls of howler monkeys, creating a mesmerizing and a little unnerving symphony of life. By late afternoon, the group reached the banks of a broad, slow-moving river. The water was murky, its surface dotted with floating debris and the occasional ripple from a fish or submerged branch. Paulo informed the group that they would need to cross the river to reach their next campsite, located on higher ground beyond the dense forest on the opposite side. The crossing was essential as their area was prone to flooding during the night. Paulo had crossed rivers like this many times before and knew the dangers lurking beneath the surface. The Amazon was home to various predators, including the fearsome black caiman, a crocodile relative known for its size and strength. These massive reptiles could grow up to 20 feet long and were apex predators in the region, capable of quickly taking down large animals. Despite the risks, Paulo was confident in his ability to lead the group across safely. He instructed everyone to stay close and move slowly, avoiding sudden movements that could attract unwanted attention. The group entered the water, the coolness a welcome relief from the oppressive heat. The river was deceptively calm, its slow current barely noticeable as they waded deeper. The water reached their waists, then their chests as they carefully crossed. Paulo was at the front, his eyes scanning the water for any signs of danger, his senses on high alert. The others followed closely behind, their nervousness palpable but tempered by their trust in Paulo's experience. For a while, everything seemed fine. The group moved steadily through the water, their progress slow but deliberate. The river was more expansive than it appeared, and the opposite bank still seemed far away. The sounds of the rainforest surrounding them, as well as the distant calls of birds and monkeys, were a constant reminder of the wildness of their surroundings. But as they reached the middle of the river, Paulo felt a sudden, cold unease. The water seemed to grow darker and thicker, and the sounds of the jungle faded into an eerie silence. He knew this feeling, the quiet that often preceded something dangerous, something hidden just out of sight. And then, without warning, the water's surface erupted in a violent splash. A massive black caiman lunged at Paulo with terrifying speed from beneath the murky water. Its powerful jaws clamped down on his waist, the force of the attack knocking him off his feet and dragging him under the water. The others barely had time to react as the river exploded into chaos. The calm surface transformed into a thrashing, bloody whirlpool of limbs and water. Paulo's mind was a blur of pain and panic as the caiman's teeth sank into his flesh, its grip unyielding as it began to drag him toward deeper water. He tried to push the caiman away, to free himself from the crushing pressure. But the predator's strength was overwhelming. The water around him turned red with blood, the murky depths concealing the true horror of the attack. The caiman began its infamous death roll, twisting and turning its massive body with brutal force. The movement was designed to tear apart its prey, to disorient and drown it before the final strike. Paulo's body was slammed against submerged rocks and debris as the caiman rolled, the pain so intense that it felt like his bones were being shattered. His lungs burned as he struggled to hold his breath, the water filling his mouth and nose as he was pulled deeper into the river. On the surface, the other explorers were in shock, their terror freezing them in place for a moment before instinct took over. They grabbed anything they could find, sticks, rocks, even their cameras, and began to strike at the water, desperate to save their guide. The river, once a place of calm and life, had become a battleground, the air filled with splashing and shouting, the water churning with blood and debris. The caiman, however, was relentless. Each blow from the group seemed to enrage it further, its grip on Paulo tightening as it tried to pull him away from the surface. The other explorers waded closer, risking their safety as they tried to reach Paulo. But the caiman was too strong. It thrashed violently, its tail sending waves crashing over them, knocking them off balance and forcing them back. His strength fading, Paulo knew he had to do anything to break free. He reached down, his hands grasping the caiman's eyes, the only vulnerable part of its armored body. He dug his fingers into the sockets, hoping to blind the beast and make it release him. The caiman thrashed even harder, the pain driving it into a frenzy, but it still refused to let go. The water was now thick with blood, and the visibility was reduced to nothing as the caiman continued its assault. Paulo's vision is blurred and his body grows weaker with each passing second. The world around him seemed to fade away, the sounds of the river and the shouts of the others growing distant as he felt himself slipping into unconsciousness. But just as his strength gave out, the caiman released its grip. Whether it was the pain, the relentless attacks from the others, or simply a moment of confusion, Paulo didn't know. He only knew he was free, his body floating to the surface as the caiman disappeared into the depths. The others pulled him to the shore, their hands trembling with fear and relief. Once so calm and inviting, the river had revealed its true, deadly nature. The Amazon, a place of unparalleled beauty and danger, had claimed another victim in its eternal struggle between life and death. In June 2006, an experienced diver, Sam Harris, embarked on an underwater exploration in the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf, known for its warm waters and diverse marine life, had always been Sam's favorite spot. He had dived in many parts of the world, but the Gulf's combination of clear water and hidden underwater caves made it one of the most exciting and challenging places for exploration. On this particular day, Sam was accompanied by his close friend and fellow diver, Mark Turner. The two had planned this dive for weeks, eager to explore a lesser-known underwater cave system off the coast of Florida. The cave, rumored to be a haven for elusive marine life, had drawn the interest of divers and marine biologists alike, but only some had ventured deep into its shadowy depths. The thrill of the unknown was what attracted Sam and Mark the most. The day began with the usual preparations. The sky was clear, the sun was bright, and the sea was calm. A perfect day for diving. Sam and Mark checked their gear meticulously, ensuring everything was in working order. They were both experienced, but they knew that even the slightest mistake in preparation could lead to disaster, especially in a place as unpredictable as an underwater cave. Once satisfied, they boarded a small boat and headed to the dive site. The ride was smooth, the boat slicing through the water as they approached the location, the anticipation built with every passing minute. Sam's heart raced with excitement and a hint of nervousness, a feeling he had come to expect before every challenging dive. As they reached the site, the boat anchored above the entrance to the cave. The water below was a deep blue, almost inviting, but they knew that beneath the surface lay a world of hidden dangers. Giant groupers, some weighing over 800 pounds, were known to inhabit these waters. While usually docile, these massive fish could become aggressive if provoked or disturbed. Sam had encountered groupers before, but had never seen one of the monstrous sizes rumored to dwell in these caves. With everything ready, Sam and Mark donned their gear, gave each other a final nod, and plunged into the water. The cool embrace of the sea was familiar and comforting. They descended slowly, the light from above fading as they approached the cave entrance. The clear water provided a good view of the coral formations and schools of fish that swam around them. It was a beautiful, almost surreal environment, but there was an undercurrent of tension that neither could shake. As they entered the cave, the light from the surface barely penetrated the darkness. The walls were covered in coral and rock, the shadows creating an eerie atmosphere. Sam led the way, his flashlight cutting through the gloom as he searched for signs of marine life. The cave was vast, with narrow passages leading deeper into the unknown. They moved carefully, mindful of the confined space and the need to conserve air. The deeper they went, the more the cave seemed to close around them. The silence was almost complete, broken only by their breathing and the occasional water movement. The sense of isolation was intense, but it was exactly what Sam and Mark had sought, a chance to explore a place few had seen, to discover something new and untouched by the world above. But as they ventured further, Sam noticed something in the distance, a large shadow moving slowly in the water. His heart skipped a beat as he realized what it was, a giant grouper, much larger than any he had seen. The fish was massive, easily over 800 pounds, with a body as thick as a barrel and a mouth wide enough to swallow a man's arm. It hovered in the water, its eyes fixed on the intruders. Sam signaled to Mark, pointing out the grouper. They both knew to keep their distance to avoid startling the creature. However, something about the grouper's behavior was different. It wasn't moving away as they approached. It seemed to watch them, almost waiting. As Sam moved closer to get a better look, the grouper suddenly darted forward with surprising speed. Before Sam could react, the fish rammed into him with the force of a battering ram, knocking the regulator from his mouth. The impact sent him spinning, his vision blurring as he struggled to regain control. His heart pounded in his chest as he reached for his regulator, his lungs screaming for air. The grouper wasn't done. It circled back, its massive body moving with an agility that belied its size. Sam managed to grab his regulator and take a desperate breath just as the grouper lunged again. This time it aimed for his arm, its wide mouth snapping shut around his forearm with a grip like iron. The pain was immediate and intense, the fish's teeth digging into his flesh as it tried to pull him deeper into the cave. Sam thrashed and kicked, trying to free himself, but the grouper's strength was overwhelming. The fish began to drag him backward, away from the light and deeper into the cave's darkness. The walls of the cave seemed to close in around him. the narrow passages offering no escape. His air supply was dwindling, the seconds ticking in a race against time. Seeing his friend in danger, Mark rushed forward, trying to help. He grabbed a rock from the cave floor and struck the grouper's side, but the fish barely reacted, focusing entirely on its prey. Sam's vision began to blur as the lack of oxygen took its toll. He could feel the grouper's jaws tightening, the pressure increasing as it tried to drag him further into the cave. In a final, desperate attempt to free himself, Sam reached out with his free hand and jabbed his fingers into the grouper's eye. The fish thrashed violently, releasing its grip on his arm as it recoiled in pain. Sam seized the moment and pushed himself away, kicking with all his strength toward the cave entrance. Mark was there, grabbing Sam's arm and pulling him toward the light. The grouper, still disoriented, swam away into the cave's depths, disappearing into the darkness. Sam's heart raced as they swam upward, the pain in his arm almost unbearable, but the need to reach the surface outweighed everything else. They broke the surface and gasped for air, the bright sunlight almost blinding after the cave's darkness. The boat was still anchored nearby, and they made their way to it as quickly as possible, their bodies shaking from the adrenaline and fear. Once a place of beauty and discovery, the Gulf of Mexico had revealed its darker, more dangerous side. Sam knew he had come close to not making it out, and the memory of those final moments in the cave would haunt him for a long time. In May 2008, 4 friends, Daniel, Lucas, Martin, and Ethan, set out for a day of fishing off the coast of Mauritius, a small island nation in the Indian Ocean. The weather was perfect, the sky clear, and the ocean calm. The group had rented a small boat, eager to spend the day catching fish and enjoying the beauty of the sea. Mauritius, known for its stunning beaches and crystal-clear waters, was a paradise for tourists and locals, and the group was looking forward to a day of relaxation and fun. The morning began early, with the friends gathering their gear and setting out from the harbor. The boat was stocked with bait, fishing rods, and a cooler filled with drinks and snacks. As they motored into the open sea, the sun rose, casting a golden light over the water. The air was warm, and the boat's gentle rocking was soothing as they navigated further from the shore, searching for the perfect spot to drop their lines. The Indian Ocean, rich with marine life, was home to various fish species, making it a popular destination for fishing enthusiasts. However, it was also home to some of the ocean's most formidable predators, including the tiger shark. Known for its aggressive behavior and powerful jaws, the tiger shark was a creature to be respected. These sharks could grow up to 16 feet long and were often seen patrolling the waters around Mauritius, drawn by the abundance of prey. By mid-morning, the group had found their spot. They dropped anchor, cast their lines, and settled in for what they hoped would be a successful day of fishing. The water was so clear that they saw the fish swimming below, darting around the bait with quick silvery flashes. The friends joked and laughed as they waited for a bite, the mood light and carefree. But as the hours passed, Daniel noticed something strange. The fish so abundant earlier seemed to have disappeared, leaving the water eerily still. He scanned the surface, looking for any signs of movement, but saw nothing. It was as if the ocean had suddenly gone quiet, the only sound the gentle lapping of the waves against the boat. Then, out of the corner of his eye, Daniel saw a dark shape moving beneath the water, circling the boat slowly. He leaned over the side, trying to get a better look, and his heart skipped a beat as he realized what it was. A giant tiger shark, its sleek striped body gliding effortlessly through the water. He quickly alerted the others, who gathered around the boat's edge to watch. The shark was massive, easily 12 feet long, and interested in their ship. Drawn by the scent of the bait and the water, the shark began to circle closer, its movements deliberate and unsettling. The group fell silent, the earlier laughter replaced by a growing unease. As the shark circled, it began to bump the boat with its snout, testing the unfamiliar object. The first few bumps were light, almost curious, but the shark grew more aggressive. Each hit was more complex than the last, rocking the boat and sending ripples across the water's surface. The friends exchanged nervous glances, the tension in the air thickening with each passing moment. Suddenly, without warning, the shark launched itself out of the water with incredible speed, crashing into the side of the boat. The impact was so powerful that the ship tilted dangerously, nearly capsizing as the friends scrambled to keep their balance. The shark's jaws snapped open, its teeth gleaming in the sunlight as it thrashed wildly, searching for something to bite. Panic erupted among the group as they realized the seriousness of the situation. In a frenzy, the shark began to tear apart the fishing gear that hung over the side of the boat, its mighty jaws ripping through lines and rods with ease. The ship rocked violently as the shark continued its assault, its tail slapping the water and sending seawater sprays into the air. Daniel, the closest to the shark, grabbed a fishing pole and tried to push the predator away, but the shark was relentless. It snapped at the pole, nearly pulling him overboard in the process. Martin and Ethan rushed to the engine, desperately trying to start it so they could escape, but their hands fumbled with the controls in their panic. Now, listing to one side, the boat began to take on water as the shark continued to batter it. The friends knew they had to act fast before the situation became fatal. Lucas grabbed an oar and struck the shark as hard as possible, aiming for its sensitive snout. The shark recoiled slightly, but it wasn't enough to deter it. The predator's eyes remained fixed on the boat, its jaws snapping open and shut as it tried to get a grip on anything within reach. The friends were running out of options. The boat was in danger of capsizing, and the shark showed no signs of letting up. Finally, the engine roared to life after what felt like an eternity. Martin shoved the throttle forward and the boat lurched ahead, leaving the shark behind in a cloud of spray. But the shark wasn't done. It pursued them, its dorsal fin cutting through the water like a knife as it gave chase. The friends clung to the boat's sides, their hearts pounding as they sped away from the predator. The engine strained as they pushed it to its limits, the boat bouncing over the waves as they raced for safety. For a few tense minutes, it seemed as though the shark might catch them. But gradually, the distance between the boat and the shark grew, the predator finally abandoning the chase as the ship neared the safety of the shore. Breathing heavily, the friends looked at each other, their faces pale with shock. The once peaceful waters of the Indian Ocean had turned into chaos and terror. The boat, battered and damaged, was a stark reminder of how quickly a fun day could turn into a life-or-death struggle. As they limped back to the harbor, what happened began to sink in. They had met with one of the ocean's most fearsome predators and lived to tell the tale. The Indian Ocean, with all its beauty and allure, had shown them a side they would never forget. In July 2010, Emily Rogers, a 26-year-old teacher from Boston, was on a much-needed vacation in the Caribbean, soaking up the sun on the beautiful island of St. Lucia. The island was a dream destination with its lush mountains and turquoise waters. After days of exploring, Emily decided to spend her afternoon enjoying a peaceful swim in the warm, clear waters of a secluded beach she had discovered earlier in her trip. The beach was quiet, with only a few families and couples scattered along the shore, and the water was calm, inviting her in for a relaxing swim. The day had started ideally. The sun was shining, the sky was clear, and the gentle sound of waves provided a soothing backdrop. Emily had spent the morning lounging on the sand, letting the stress of her life melt away. After a while, the ocean's call became too strong to resist, and she waded into the water, feeling the calm waves lap against her skin. She swam out a little farther, enjoying the serenity of the sea and the sight of fish darting below her in the crystal-clear water. She felt completely at peace as she floated on her back, looking up at the bright blue sky. The water was so warm and inviting that she lost track of time, drifting farther from the shore. It felt like nothing could go wrong on such a perfect day. But as she swam more profoundly into the ocean, a sudden sharp sting interrupted her tranquility. In an instant, Emily's peaceful swim turned into a nightmare. A searing pain shot across her back and legs, unlike anything she had ever felt before. She gasped in shock, the pain so intense that it nearly took her breath away. She frantically looked around, trying to understand what was happening, but the water around her appeared calm and empty. Unbeknownst to Emily, she had swum into the nearly invisible tentacles of a Portuguese man-o'-war, a jellyfish-like creature known for its excruciating and dangerous sting. The creature's long, venomous tentacles had wrapped around her body, clinging to her skin and injecting venom with every touch. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, spreading through her body like wildfire. Emily's muscles began to seize up, making it difficult to swim. The once calm water now felt hostile and unwelcoming. She struggled to keep her head above the surface as the burning sensation intensified, radiating from her back and legs and spreading throughout her entire body. Her heart raced as panic set in, and she knew she had to get back to shore. But every movement sent waves of pain through her. Her vision started to blur, and she felt a wave of nausea as the venom began to take effect. The water, which had felt so warm and welcoming just moments before, now felt suffocating her. She kicked her legs, trying to propel herself toward the beach, but her muscles were weak, and each kick felt less effective than the last. On the shore, a few beachgoers noticed Emily's struggle. A man who had been swimming nearby quickly recognized the danger and rushed into the water to help her. He reached Emily just as her strength failed, grabbing and pulling her toward the shore. Emily clung to him, barely able to stay conscious as the pain and venom took their toll. With great effort, the man dragged Emily onto the sand, where a small crowd had gathered. The venom had caused her skin to break out in angry red welts, and she was trembling from shock and pain. Her breathing was shallow and her vision faded in and out. The man carefully removed the tentacles still clinging to her skin, knowing they could continue to sting even after being removed from the water. Emily's world was a blur of pain and fear, but she was aware that she was no longer alone, that someone was helping her. The once perfect day had turned into a fight for survival, but with the help of a stranger, she had a chance to make it through. As help arrived, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. The serene beauty of the Caribbean had hidden a deadly danger, but Emily's will to survive and the quick actions of a good Samaritan had brought her back from the brink.